Okay. Uh, Good morning, my dear future chartered accountants. This is CH Chinmay Hegde, your learning partner for CA Final, FR and SFM. Can you please confirm that my voice is audible and the PPT is visible? Okay, this preview is giving me something else. I'm not sure whether you can see the PPT. Can you see myself and the PPT which the way I'm speaking, and is it moving? Because my preview is showing it's getting stuck or something. I don't know whether the video is moving. I'm refreshing. I don't know what's happening. This internet is not in my control. It's happening fine here, but let me restart once more. It's getting stuck here. Is it fine now? I think it's now working fine now. Yes, I think it's fine. Okay. I think now it should be smooth, right? Okay, fine. Very good. So, hello, my dear friends. So, this is FR upgradation classes, updated problem classes. These are not substitute for regular or for crash course classes. These for the additional problems which has been added by ICI in the new study material and RTPs and NTP and suggested answers. The objective is to solve these questions, not a substitute for conceptual classes. Material for these sessions is available in the Telegram channel. Please use the at CH in my Hegde. Link is available in the description. You'll be able to download the notes. So keep the notes ready with you to attend these sessions. Yesterday I told regarding business combination Ind AS 103 illustrations added by SEI. I realized illustrations were not added, only examples were added. So illustrations were not there. Examples we already discussed during the video I've shared. So I think that completes Ind AS 103. Okay, so let's begin with Ind AS 109 financial instruments. Sorry, 109 and Ind AS 32 financial instruments. Quite a few problems are there. Let's see what we are able to understand. But I think typical problems are definitely involved, and some advanced problems are also involved. Okay, so financial instruments is basically it's a contract, asset of one, liability or equity of another. Simple definition: asset means you have a right, liability means you have an obligation. So we don't want to discuss too much of concepts. I assume already know it, and I expect you to know it already, since the objective of this session is to understand the updated problems. So let's begin. Hope you have the material with you. Let's do this problem. Okay, a share broking company is dealing in sale or purchase of shares on its own account, and therefore is having inventory of shares purchased it by for trading purpose. How will these instruments be accounted for in the financial statements? So basically trying to tell which standard applies here, because when you talk about shares, it's a financial instruments. So does Ind AS 32 or 109 apply, or because they're share trading company, does inventory apply? AS2, Ind AS 2 should we apply? Okay, the answer is very simple actually. Let me read it out for you. Ind AS 2 inventories, if you remember, in the scope, it excludes Ind AS 32, Ind AS 109 financial instruments, because even though it is an inventory, but is more of a financial asset. And regarding financial asset, all the varieties held for trading purposes, all those purposes are discussed in Ind AS 109 itself, and that is why it is taken out from inventory. So basically we tell we don't apply Ind AS 2 because in the scope it has been excluded. We apply Ind AS 109. A small piece of additional GAN for you. Similar situation does not exist for intangible assets. You know, Tally company, see, Tally for all of us is a software, accounting software. But for the Tally company, it is not a software. I mean, it is not an intangible asset for them, because for them it is an inventory. So which one should we apply? Should we apply Ind AS 38 or Ind AS 2? Intangible asset. We apply Ind AS 2 because there is no such exclusions from Ind AS 2 regarding intangible asset. But there is exclusion from Ind AS 2 regarding financial instruments. So it is outside the scope of Ind AS 2. It is included in financial instrument. Is it FVTPL? Definitely yes, because held for trading purpose. You know, there are three types of assets financial asset. We have amortized cost, we have FET-OCI and FETPL. But for equity nature, investment in the nature of equity, you only have two, FET-OCI, FETPL. So when it is for trading purposes, it is automatically classified as FETPL, fair value through P&L account. Okay, so that's what it says. And one more point also they are telling, and let's read that also, a good point. Further, Ind AS 101, first time adoption of Indian accounting standard, does not provide any transitional relief from the application of the above standards. Accordingly, the given case, relevant requirements of Ind AS 109, Ind AS 32, Ind AS 107 shall be applied retrospectively. So this point was not required in the problem, a value addition. In the exam, you need not mention this point. So because first time adoption Ind AS 101 does not give any adoption, when you are coming to Ind AS for the first time, you have to account for this retrospectively. There is some exemption regarding hedge accounting and all, but specifically with respect to stock in trade, nothing of that sort. Ind AS 109, you apply from the beginning. That is retrospective effect. Anyway, so let's go further. Entity ABC Limited, whose functional currency is Indian rupees. Functional currency that you will cover in Ind AS 21. What is the key word for functional currency? Primary economic environment. PEE. Primary economic environment in which the entity operates. PE. In SFM, it is price earning ratio. PE. In your taxation, you have permanent establishment. But in FRPE, we say primary economic environment. Anyway, not required here. Sells products in France denominated in euro. ABC enters into a contract with the investment bank to convert euro into Indian rupees at a fixed exchange rate. The contract requires ABC to remit euro based on its sales volume in the France in exchange for Indian rupees at a fixed rate of 80. Is that contract derivative? Okay, so we have ABC Limited, whose functional currency is rupees, and they sell products to customer in France. Customer in France. Okay. And ABC enters into a contract with investment bank. Okay, so they will enter into a contract with investment bank. Investment bank. And what is the contract? To convert euro into rupees at a fixed exchange rate. The contract requires ABC to remit euros. ABC should give you investment bank euro, and investment bank will give the ABC rupees, and this exchange rate is fixed. This rupees and euro exchange rate is fixed. The contract requires ABC to remit euro based on its sales volume in exchange for Indian rupees at an exchange rate of 80. So how many volumes, how many units that euro is going to be sold? That euro, number of units, number of euros depends on sales volume. Okay. Now, is this a derivative contract? They're not asking whether it's a hedging contract and all. Is this a derivative contract? For derivative contract, you have to satisfy three conditions. First, the value of derivative contract should change with respect to the value of underlying variable. It should be settled at a future rate, and it should require no investment, initial investment or minimal investment as compared to the underlying asset. Now here, the derivative instrument, is it having a underlying variable? Yes. Euro is an underlying variable, and number of units depends on the sales volume, which is also underlying variable. So you can see the contract has two underlying variables, foreign exchange rate and the volume of sales. No initial investment required, or an initial investment smaller than would be required of other types of contract. So that is no investment is satisfied, minimal investment is not required, and it's going to be settled at a later date. Whenever you are going to deliver euro, then you get the rupees. So settlement will be at a later date, and therefore this is classified as derivative. In the exam, you have to write the three conditions for classifying it as derivatives. Okay, hope you got it. The definition of derivative requires that instrument is settled at a future date. Is this criterion met even if option is expected not to be exercised, for example, because it is out of the money? So, you know, three conditions for derivative. Value of derivative should change with respect to the value of underlying variable. No investment, initial investment or minimal investment as compared to the underlying variable, and it is to be settled at a future date. Now, is this satisfied even if it is out of the money? What do you mean by out of the money? For example, let me take call option. What is call option? It is right to buy the underlying asset. Okay, so if strike price is 100, which means your purchase price is 100, and market price is, let's say, 120. Now you see where it is cheaper to buy, 100 or 120, obviously 100. So it is beneficial for the party to purchase the asset in the option. So we say option will be exercised. But if the market price is 80, now where it is beneficial for the party to purchase? To go to the market and purchase. So in this case, options will not be exercised and we say option lapse. And this situation we also call it as when it is likely to be exercised, we say it is in the money. And when it is not likely to be exercised, we call it as out of the money. It's exactly equal, we call it as at the money. I hope you are aware of these terminologies in SFM. Okay, now the question is this. The contract is 3 months away. The contract is 3 months away and market price is 80. Now, standing on today, looking at the market price today, do you think the options will be exercised? It is out of the money, it will not be exercised. The question is it still satisfying the requirement of is settled at a future date? The answer is yes. Option is settled upon exercise or not at maturity, and expiry, like in my example, 3 months. Expiry at maturity is a form of settlement even though there is no exchange or consideration, which means after 3 months, if the market price remains to be 80, that means you say option lapse. And the fact that option not exercised is also a form of settlement. So settlement does not mean you only exercise. Whether it lapses or you exercise, both situations are part of settled at future date. Settlement means both. Whether you exercise or you not exercise, ultimately contract gets closed. Till then, contract is open, right? That's what it means by settle at a future date. Therefore, even if it is out of the money contract, such contracts are satisfying definition of derivatives. Hope you got the point. Let's move further. Okay, next. Entity B Limited writes an option contract for sale of shares of Target Limited at a fixed price of 100 per share to C Limited. This option is exercisable anytime for a period of 90 days, that is American option. Evaluate this under definition of financial instrument. Okay. Now financial instrument means what? Remember, it should be asset of another, financial asset of one, or and financial liability or equity of another. So if it satisfies the definition of either financial asset or financial liability or equity, then this is coming under financial instrument. Okay, let's understand entity B Limited. So there is one entity B Limited. writes an option for contract of sale of shares of Target Limited. Okay, so underlying assets is UA. UA means not some movie rating. Shares underlying asset UA. That's the short form. Is shares of Target Limited. Another company C Limited. Okay. Now what is B Limited position? They have written the option contract for sale. They are option writers. And obviously C Limited is the option buyer. And what option writer is for sale of shares. Now writer, can you tell me, will they have the right or will they have the obligation? Option writers, option sellers, can you tell me, will they have the right or will they have obligation? B Limited, option writers. Option writer means they will have the obligation. So they have the obligation to what? Obligation to sell. Whereas C Limited has got what? If one part, writer has obligation means obviously the holder will have the right. Right to do what? Opposite. Right to buy. Right to buy. So basically you can say B Limited or right to buy means it's a position of call option. So we can say C plus for C Limited and C minus, that is for B Limited. Obligation for B Limited, we say call option writer position. This option is exercisable anytime for a period of 90 days at a fixed price of 100. So strike price is 100. So strike price is 100. Okay, now obviously there will be some premium also. We don't know how much it is premium. Now, if the market price happens to be, let's say, 110, or the example it has given 120. Okay, market price is 120 for example purpose. Okay, if market price 120 and C Limited being the holder wants to exercise the option, wants to buy the underlying asset, then what is the obligation of B Limited now? They have to give shares. Where do they get the shares from? They have to go to the market, buy it at 120 rupees and sell it at 100 rupees. So there is an obligation on B Limited to the extent of 20 rupees. You can say loss, but also you can say there is an obligation to pay if the settlement happens on net basis. Either case, you have an exposure of additional liability of 20 rupees from B Limited point of view. So for B Limited, in that case becomes a financial liability. For C Limited, it becomes financial asset. Suppose if it is not 120, suppose if the market price happens to be 90 rupees, then options will not be exercised, but you would have received the premium. I don't know how much the premium, let's say 3 rupee premium. That becomes your financial asset because you don't have to give it back. That becomes your profit, or the financial liability what you received need not be given. So depending on the market movements, your liability value can fluctuate. It's an obligation to pay cash, obligation to deliver shares, which is a financial asset. So obviously this satisfies the definition of financial liability and therefore it is a financial instrument. And you can also say it's a definition of derivative because the value of this changes with respect to the value of shares of Target Limited, right? If the share price changes, the option premium also will change. So value of derivative changes with respect to the value of underlying asset. And no investment or initial investment, yes, you are not paying 100 rupees, you are dealing in premiums, which is minimal as compared to the underlying asset value, and to be expected at a future date, yes, anytime within 90 days, not settled today, anytime within 90 days. So all the definition of derivative is satisfied. Yes, it satisfies the definition of a derivative. And just keep the point in mind, they are not selling their own shares. B Limited is selling the shares of Target Limited, somebody else shares. If it is your own shares, then it comes under puttable instruments. There is a separate discussion on that. Please go through that. I'm just reminding you that if it is your own shares, then it comes under a different discussion. Okay. Okay. Let me go further. A Limited issues warrants to all the existing shareholders, entitling them to purchase additional equity shares of A Limited with the face value of 100 per share at an issue price of 150 per share. Evaluate whether constitutes equity instrument or financial liability. First, regarding is it a derivative contract? Definitely yes, it satisfies definition of derivative contract because value of the warrant changes with respect to the value of the shares of the company. It involves no initial investment, nothing is being paid now, and it is settled at a future date. So it meets the definition of a derivative. Then coming to the question whether equity instrument or financial liability. The equity instrument, the important rule we follow is fixed for fixed. What is fixed for fixed? Number of shares should be fixed. The consideration also should be fixed. Fixed for fixed, that becomes equity instrument. So applying the definition of equity under Ind AS 32, a contract will be settled by exchange for a fixed number of shares for a fixed amount of cash. Definition amount of cash meets the definition of equity instrument. Fixed for fixed. That's the key word to be remembered. The above contract is derivative contract and will be settled by issue of fixed number of own equity instrument for a fixed amount of cash. Yes, them to purchase additional equity share with a face value at a price of 150 per share. Fixed price and fixed number of share, and hence it meets the definition of equity instrument. The number of shares are not variable. If you complete 3 years, if you complete 5 years, it becomes a different discussion altogether. Therefore, it is going to become it is classified as equity instrument and not a liability instrument. Okay, straightforward one. A lease contract contains a provision that rental increase each year by 3 million. Is this an embedded derivative contract? Okay, let me do one thing. Let me just quickly tell you the definition of embedded derivative contracts. Okay, this is the broad meaning of it, the chart. Okay, it is embedded in other contract, that is a derivative implicit in another contract called as host contract. But you have to remember, you have to satisfy these three conditions. Focus on these three conditions. Different economic characteristics, existing comparable variable, host contract is not measured at fair value. I told you embedded derivative is included in another contract. That another contract is called as host contract. And if you want to separate, then one of the condition is different economic characteristics. What is economic characteristic difference? That is the host contract which derivative is included in, and the economic contract, derivative, this host contract and the derivative should have different economic characteristics, which means the reason for which the host contract value changes, the reasons for which the derivative fluctuate should be different. The valuation of these two should be on different parameters. What do you mean by that? The example what we are looking at now is a typical application of that. Okay, let me explain. There is a lease contract that contains provision of lease rentals each year by rupees 3 million. Now, here you have a lease contract and it is increasing lease rentals by 3 million. First of all, I think in this problem there is no derivative at all, right? Where is derivative contract implicit? For example, if it is a lease contract to pay foreign currency, the foreign currency becomes derivative. In a convertible debenture, the conversion option becomes derivative. I think here price adjustment feature does not meet the definition of derivative only, because derivative means the value of underlying asset should change, no investment, settled at a future date. Where is the value of underlying variable? Where is the derivative? There is no such thing. Therefore the derivative itself is not satisfied, so there is no question of embedded derivative. But let me tell you one different application in the same problem. If it was not rupees 3 million or not a local lease contract, if it was a foreign lease contract, payable in UK, I mean payable in pounds or payable in euros, then there is underlying variable which is foreign currency. It would have become a embedded derivative. Anyway, that we'll discuss separately. Keep it in mind. I'll go further. A lease contract between two Indian companies of asset in India includes lease rental that are dependent on US inflation index. Can the entity treat the inflation linked feature as closely related? Can they treat inflation linked feature as closely related? Okay, for inflation linked feature, an embedded derivative is a lease contract is considered as closely related if inflation related index is inflation in the entity's own economic environment. They are closely related if it is in the own economic environment. You will see these two terms coming in many places, which means in, let's say, Mumbai, you enter into a lease agreement with other person and the lease will increase with respect to Indian inflation, then you say they are closely related. It should be with respect to own economic environment. You see, the asset is in India, but the lease rentals are dependent on US inflation index. So the asset is in one country, inflation is relevant for another country, they definitely are not closely related, and hence embedded derivative is not closely related. Therefore it needs to be separated. Of course other two conditions also should be satisfied. Okay, let me go further. As per the contract entered between lessee and lessor, lease rental increased by rupees 3 million if profit after tax is rupees 200 million. Can they treat inflation linked feature closely related? Okay, now closely related, inflation linked, you can say that. That too, it should be in the same country. I hope you remember that. Inflation linked increase with respect to the same country. Then you can say they are closely related, you need not separate it. But what about this? This is if profit after tax is over 200 million. Only in situation where you make a profit of over 200 million, then this lease rental becomes payable. It is a contingent in nature. So contingent lease rentals based on sales are closely related to the host lease contract. The same is not true for contingent rentals based upon profit after tax. So if it is based on sales, then you can say it is related to lease contract. See, for example, this is a practical situation you will try to apply. Something like royalty, you can think. Not royalty, but something like that. You have a machinery. The owner will tell how many units you produce and sell. Give me 10 rupee per every unit you produce or you sell. That is one type. Other type is how much of profit you do. Only if you make a more profit, give it to me. Two different situations, right? So what they are telling, if it is sales based, like production based, sales based, then they are closely related. If it is profit based, then they are not closely related. Means they need to be separated. The contingency part, because of profit dependency, need to be separated. Okay, let's go further. It's more like a profit share. Okay. Okay, looks like a big problem. Take a deep breath and we'll solve it together. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Company Z is engaged in the business of importing oil seeds for further processing as well as for trading purposes. It enters into the following types of contract on 1st of October 2001. What we should do? Companies that is record determine whether these contract for purchase and sale of oil seeds are derivative within the scope of Ind AS 109 or executory contract outside the scope of Ind AS 109. Okay, let me just quickly uh, tell you the concept of derivative. For that, I just want to revise the concept of financial asset and financial liability once. Quickly, I'll just go through that. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, let me explain. I don't have any specific thing. Okay, so keep this point in mind regarding derivatives. Okay, regarding derivatives. Now, derivatives can be settled in two bases: settlement on delivery basis or settlement can be on cash basis. Settlement on cash basis. This also called as settlement on net basis, where actual delivery, buy and sale will not take place. The difference between the market price and the contract price will be paid in cash or received in cash. Now, when it's settlement on net basis, on cash basis, where delivery will not take place, that is always a financial instrument. It's a financial asset or financial liability because it is obligation to pay cash or right to receive cash. So when you have an obligation to pay cash or right to receive cash, it's automatically becomes an asset or liability, financial asset or liability. The underlying instrument does not matter. Future or options. But when it is with respect to settlement by delivery basis, then underlying asset becomes important. If underlying asset is if underlying asset is financial assets, that is obligation to uh, take the delivery of financial asset or obligation to exchange financial asset like shares or some other like bonds, those kind of thing. So if underlying asset is a financial asset, yes, then it becomes a financial instrument, financial asset or financial liability. But if underlying asset is non-financial asset, is not financial asset like obligation or right to purchase building goods which are not financial in nature, then when underlying asset is not a financial asset, even the derivative is not a financial asset, not a financial liability, meaning not financial instrument. So keep this broad framework in mind for the derivative to be classified as financial instrument or not a financial instrument. Keep this chart in mind. It will be useful for you while solving this problem. Okay, so let me look at each situation one by one. Nature of contract: import of oil seeds from a foreign supplier. Quantity and the rate: 100 metric ton, USD 400. 100 metric ton at 400 each, to be delivered on 31st of March. Net settlement clause included? Yes. Net settlement in practice for similar contract? There also have been several instances of the oil seeds being sold prior or shortly after taking the delivery. This instance of net settlement constitutes approximately 30% of the total import contracts. Okay, now, first of all, do you have net settlement contract? Yes, we have net settlement. So when I talk about net settlement contract, don't really talk about the underlying asset. Not really important. Is it in practice? That's also very important. There have been several instances being sold priorly or shortly after delivery, meaning the instance of net settlements constitute 30%. So net settlement is possible. About 30% of you are settling on net basis. Again, don't have the rule that how much percentage to be applied. Principle is what we apply. Now the question is, this contract, can they be settled on net basis? Answer is yes. Is it likely? Yes, 30% of the times we have done. So in that case, we will classify this as a derivative and we account for fair value through P&L, fair value basis, FVTPL basis. It is to be recognized on fair value basis. I'll just put institute solution also for your reference for contract 1. So you can see the contract permits net settlement and there is a past practice. Therefore, contract will be under Ind AS 109 and should be recognized as derivative. Contract will be recognized on fair value changes on statement of profit and loss on each reporting date. So basically, we have to classify it as FVTPL. Derivative classified on FVTPL. Okay, let's look at contract 2. Purchase of oil seeds from domestic producer supplier 50 metric ton per metric ton to be delivered on 31st of January. Net settlement clause, yes. The company Z has net settled some of the domestic purchase contract. However, these instances are 1% of the total domestic contracts in value. Remaining contracts are settled by taking delivery of oil seeds which are used for further processing. Now, you tell me, is this going to be a financial instrument or not? You are not likely to settle on net basis because instances are 1%, very, very negligible. So it's predominantly likely to be exercised. So when you are going to purchase the asset, today you don't have to account for it. That is, it is outside the scope of Ind AS 109 because it's a non-financial asset. Let me show you what Institute has given as the answer. Contract 2 also permits net settlement. Further, there have been some instances, however, these have been infrequent, that is only 1%. Companies that is in practice of taking delivery and similar contract using them for further processing. This indicates this also met the criteria of own use. This you don't worry much. Own use means once you take the delivery, use it for own purposes. That's what they mean. Own purposes also means selling later, both ways. Own use exemption and should be considered as executory contract. What is the executory contract? When you have a contract to buy, that is, you have an obligation to buy, other person has a obligation to sell, you have a obligation to make the payment. In the sense, both the parties have an obligations. Like, see, if you have entered to contract to purchase, you have a, let's say, you have to receive goods, other person has to receive cash. So if other person has obligation to give you goods, you have an obligation to pay cash. So when the contract are obligated from both the sides, I also have obligation, you also have obligation. That is a contract where promise is not performed or equally performed. That's what executory contract says, that agreements need not be accounted. That's what is covered under Ind AS 37. Exception is only onerous contract where there is an expected outflow of resources. You discuss in Ind AS 37. So executory contracts are outside the scope of Ind AS 37, meaning not accounted except onerous contract. But anyway, so here this agreement satisfies the definition of own use or non-financial instrument delivery taking place. So this will not come under Ind AS 109. This is not a derivative. It's a contract yet to be executed. So this becomes a executory contract and not a derivative under Ind AS 109. Okay, let me go to contract 3. Contract to sell oil seeds on commodity exchange 50 metric ton at $450 per metric ton, maturing on 15th January. Net settlement clause, yes, these contracts are required to be settled on net settled with exchange on maturity date. Companies that enters into these type of derivatives to hedge the risk in domestic oil seeds to purchase the future contracts. So this obviously requires net settlement basis, and therefore you have to account it as derivative and classified as FVTPL. So what the institute says, this contracts is the nature derivative contract on commodity exchange required net settlement, therefore derivative contract would be covered by IND 109 and required as FVTPL. But there is one important element we need not add here, but keep it in mind. This is for hedging purpose, and typically this satisfies the definition of a cash flow hedge. And in case of cash flow hedge, this being an hedging instrument, because hedging item has not gone to P&L yet, hedging instrument also will not go to P&L immediately. If it has hedging item has gone to P&L, yes, even this also will go to P&L. Otherwise, hedging instrument is transferred to cash flow hedge reserve. Just keep it in mind. Maybe we take up a problem later. That is in Ind AS 109. Okay, I hope you understood. It's all about simple concept in this problem. If the settlement is on net basis, it becomes a financial instrument derivative under FVTPL. If it is not, if it is not on net settlement basis, then is it non-financial asset used for own exemption? Yes, it is own use exemption. That means it's for own use purpose. That is non-financial asset. It will be classified as executory contract, not a derivative contract. So the purpose of this problem is to understand how the net settlement will take place, or settlement takes by delivery basis. Hope you got the point. I'll go further. Okay, next problem. This problem is on embedded derivative. So let's read. Company A, an Indian company whose functional currency is rupees, enters into contract to purchase machinery from unrelated local supplier company B. Local. The functional currency of the company B is also rupees. Local. Rupees. However, the contract is denominated in USD. Some fancy. Since the machinery is sourced by company B from US based supplier. Anyway, that is their personal problem. So company A, let's say Mumbai Wala, local. Company B, Delhi Wala, local. But the transaction between them is expressed in USD because company B is importing from USA. What are maybe the reason? The two companies' functional currencies are same, but the transaction amount is different. This is one of the conditions specified in embedded derivative contract for separation purpose. So if you want to separate, this one of the condition, one of the situation given, not condition, one of the situation, that the two entities having same functional currency, but the underlying asset is the underlying contract is in different currency. That's what happened here. Payment is due to company B on delivery of the machinery. Key terms of the contract. Order date 9 September. Delivery or payment date 31st December. Purchase price US dollar 1 million, so 10 lakh. USD rupees forward rate on 9 September, due on 31st December, 67.8. USD spot rate on 9 September 66.4. USD rupees forward rate on 31st December. On 30th of September 67.5. On 31st December 67. Basically spot rate. Company A is required to analyze if the contract for the purchase of machinery and company B is an embedded derivative and whether this should be separately accounted for on the basis of guidance in Ind AS 109. Also give the necessary journal entries for the same. Okay, first let me take you through the theoretical parts. Let's see if you can understand the theoretical part. I'll read slowly. Based on the guidance above, USD contract for purchase of machinery includes an embedded currency due to following reasons. Let's look at the reasons. The host contract is a purchase contract and this is not classified as FETP. Yes, three conditions. Host contract should not be a fair value. Comparable derivative must be there and the economic characteristics should be different. The embedded foreign currency feature required to be settled on the contract by payment of USD at a future date meets the definition of standalone derivative. The definition that the contract has US dollar element. So USD purchase and sale, there is a comparable instrument. So it is taken for forward contract for accounting purpose. USD is not the functional currency of either of the parties. Machinery is not routinely denominated in USD in commercial transactions around the world. In this context, an item or commodity may be considered as routinely denominated in particular currency only if such currency was used in large majority of similar transactions of the world. For example, transactions in crude oil generally considered routinely denominated in USD. Transactions for acquiring machinery in this illustration would be generally not qualify for this exemption. This is slightly technical point. But anyway, I'll try to explain. So, in one situation where underlying instrument is a foreign currency. Underlying instrument is a foreign currency. But if the underlying instrument image is freezing, is it? Okay. Not sure why. I'll do one thing. I'll restart once more. Is it fine now? Or is it still freezing? I think it's still freezing, right? Okay. Now is it better? I think now it's better. I think now it's better, right? Okay. I'll continue. If it is still an issue, you can let me know. I'll try to do something about it. Okay. I'll continue. So what point we are telling is this. Let me read it slowly. If it is routinely denominated in this particular currency, so we are telling that when in case of embedded derivative, a currency which is not common to both the parties, so there is an embedded derivative, would like to separate it. But that has given an exemption. If it is routinely denominated in USD throughout the world, for example, crude oil is mostly denominated in US dollars. So when you transact, even though you may not have the same functional currency, you eventually happen to denominate your contract in USD because it's a practice throughout the world. So machinery, this particular machinery is not that it's available only in USA and only denominated in USD, nothing like that. Therefore, this exemption do not apply. That's what they're telling. USD is not a commonly used currency for domestic transactions, economic environment in which both entity operates. Exemption generally applies when business practices a particular economic environment is used for more stable or liquid foreign currency rather than local currency for a majority of internal or cross-border transactions or both. In the illustration above, the company A and B are company operating in India. Purchase contract is internal transaction. USD is not a commonly used currency for internal trade and therefore contract would not qualify for this exemption. Again, these are two technical points not really required from exam point of view. I think it's still getting freeze, right? Okay, let me just quickly explain this point and then I will go for maybe I'll just restart it. This is slightly technical point, which means uh, that if two companies in the same country are using some third party currency, like in this problem, there is an embed derivative. But you have an exemption for this also. What exemption? If the local currency is a unstable currency, typically it happens in Somalia, Zimbabwe, where the currencies are unstable. The foreign currency rate will get fluctuated, unstable currency. So when this happens, the companies in those countries, when they transact among themselves, they don't enter into a contract in their local currency terms. They go with foreign currency like USD because of the nature of their local currency, functional currency. In India, it's not like that. Rupee stable currency. USD, what they're entering into is not a very common phenomenon. It's a regular phenomenon. So it's not a regular phenomenon. It's an exceptional situation. Therefore, exemption don't apply. If everybody follows this, that for the instability of their own currency, they use the foreign currency for stability purpose, it means everybody follows it. Don't apply embed derivative every time, make use of exemption. But in this case, that exemption do not apply. Anyway, you don't have to talk about all these things so much. If you understood, you can, but I don't recommend so much in exam point of view. Ultimately, the point is what? Embedded derivative, separate accounting applies. Three main points you mention: different economic characteristics, host contract not measured at fair value, existing comparable amount. If you mention these 3 points, sufficient. You can mention one more condition, not a condition, situation of separation. That is, when the two countries or when the parties are having same functional currency, but the contract is denominated in different currency, this applies. That much if you write from exam point of view, that is sufficient. I've explained you for reference. You need not repeat all these points in exam point of view. Accordingly, company A is required to separate embedded derivative foreign currency derivative from the host purchase contract and recognize it as separately derivative. The separated embedded derivative is a forward contract entered on 9 September to exchange a USD 10 lakh for rupees US dollar at a forward rate of 67.8. Since the forward exchange rate has been deemed to be the market rate on the date of contract, the embedded forward contract has fair value of 0 in initial recognition. Subsequently, company A is required to measure this forward contract's fair value with the changes in fair value recognized in the statement of profit and loss. The following is the accounting treatment at the quarter end on settlement. Okay, journal entry they have given, but let me explain the concept. Okay, so there is one company A and company B. Okay, let me think from company A point of view. Okay, what is their contract? They have entered into contract to purchase machinery. Okay, so they are going to purchase machinery. and they are going to give US dollars. Okay, with whatever company be. Okay, this is the original contract, right? This is the original contract. Okay, now what we are going to do, when I say separation, or what is the embedded derivative here? USD is the embedded derivative, foreign currency is the embedded derivative, and that needs to be separated, requires separate recognition. Means, how are we going to account? From this company A, we are going to account for purchasing the machinery as one contract, purchase machinery as one contract, and company A is going to give USD in another contract. We require to do this separation. You separate the host contract, the purchasing machinery is the host contract, and USD is the uh, derivative, embedded derivative, embedded derivative. So host contract is accounted. This will be accounted only on the date of purchase, date of delivery. This is accounted on date of purchase, whereas this dollar you are going to account it later. I mean, in the sense you are going to settle it later. But you know, derivative definition, it might be settled in a future date, but you have to account it regularly. So this is accounted on every reporting date, accounted continuously, accounted on reporting date. The two on what? FVTPL basis, fair value through P&L account basis, because it's a derivative to be classified as FVTPL. Derivative contract to be settled in future requires no investment or less investment, minimal investment, and the value of the underlying asset has an impact on value of derivatives. So these three conditions satisfied, this becomes a derivative. Okay, now can you please tell me one thing here? This is USD derivative. Which contract are we talking about? Is it a contract to sell USD, or is it a contract to purchase USD? This is one, a common complication I see in students in embedded derivative. So think carefully and try to answer it. I'll give you 2 minutes. This contract, what we are talking, the second contract, embedded derivative, is it for sale of USD or is it for purchase of USD? Forward contract to purchase USD or forward contract to sell USD? What do you think? Okay, the answer is to sell USD. If you look at this chart, this presentation, you'll be easily able to identify. You see the arrow going out. You are purchasing the machinery, selling the USD. But why student get confused, you know? Because of SFM. You would have learnt forward hedging. Importer will purchase goods. Importer will purchase goods and he has to make the payment of USD. To make the payment of USD, you enter into a forward contract to purchase USD so that you can make the payment to the importer. So the forward hedging is forward buy contract. You would have learned that in SFM. If you understood it correctly, you would not have made a mistake here. But anyway, let me explain you both the ways. Think from SFM point of view, importer has purchased goods and I have to give USD. I have an obligation to pay USD. So obligation to pay USD, I purchase from banker, forward market, forward buy. Yes, hedging purpose, I do forward buy. But once I do forward buy, what do I do with it? I'll have to give it to my supplier. I'll have to give it to, I have to satisfy my obligation. Or what is the purpose of getting USD? The purpose of getting USD is making a payment. The purpose of purchase is to give. And give means I'm selling. Understand, right? Because I have a sale obligation, I am going to purchase. I'm not talking about this purchase, I'm talking about an obligation to sell. This is one way of understanding. Easier way, think like a barter transaction. Barter transaction. What is barter transaction? In every transaction, you buy something, you sell something. So don't use the words payment. Don't use the word receipt. What is coming in, I am purchasing. What is going out, I am selling. So in this case, what I am purchasing? Machinery. Machinery coming in, I am purchasing. What I am giving? What is going out? USD. USD I am selling. As simple as that. So if it is confusing in embedded derivative transaction, take it to your mind. Barter transaction. So if you think like a barter transaction, the things becomes much easier is my opinion. So in this case, I am purchasing machinery, I am selling USD. So the embedded derivative is USD being sold, sale of USD. Okay, so we have to account for that. So embedded derivative contract is sale of USD or forward sale on forward sale of USD due on or maturity on 31st December. Maturity on 31st December. Okay. So what are the dates they have given? Date of entry 9th September, then 30th September, 31st December. Okay. So we are having 9th September, 30th September, 31st December. This is date of signing the contract. Date of signing the contract. This is one reporting date, 30th September. And 31st December is the settlement date. I mean the delivery date, whatever it is. Okay. On date of signing, what is the forward rate? What you have accounted, or you can say that what is a fair value? You always have to account on FETPL basis. What do you mean by fair value? Very simple. Difference between your contract price and market price. Even in options we have done strike price, market price. In futures also same thing. In forward also same thing. It is difference between your contract rate and market rate. What is the contract rate you have entered into? I mean, again, this is deemed, not actual contract rate, deemed. You have entered into a contract to purchase machinery and to sell USD. So there is a deemed to be selling the dollar at the rate on 9 September, 66.4. No, on So spot rate 66.4, but that's for immediate transaction. That does not matter. The spot rate on 9 September does not matter, because on 9 September, what is the deemed contract? You are going to sell USD on 31st of December. So spot rate does not matter. What is the forward rate, contract rate? 67.8. There is a contract rate, deemed contract rate 67.8. Contract rate is 67.8. Okay. Now, can you tell me what is the market rates? Don't take spot rate, my dear friend. Market rate for this contract. For contracts due on 31st December, which is the 67.8 itself. Don't take the spot rates. Don't take the spot rate. Are you understanding? We are comparing the contract rate and we are comparing the actual market rate, which is due on 31st December, the date on which settlement would take place, which is same. And usually in embedded derivative, this is same only. That is why fair value on this date is 0. I have read the sentence also. I'll read one more for you. Let's see if you can make this make sense out of this sentence. The separated embedded derivative is a forward contract entered on 9 September 2001 to sell, to exchange USD 10 lakh at rupees for a forward rate of 67.8 on 31st December. Since the forward rate has been deemed to be the market rate on the date of contract, the embedded derivative contract has a fair value of 0 on initial recognition. I hope you are able to understand this sentence. Okay, so that's why on 9 September, you don't pass any journal entry, it is same. Okay, now coming to 30th September, what is the contract rates? Contract rate is 67.8 only. You will take it from the original date because you've entered date of signing on 9 September. You take 67.8 only. That don't change. What is the market rate? Market rate. Again, please don't take spot rate on 30th September. What you should do? On 30th September, what is the forward rate maturing on 31st of December? Are you getting my point? On 30th of September, don't take spot rate. On 30th of September, a forward rate due on 31st December. I can say 3 months forward rates. The forward rate due on September on 30th of September is 67.5. 67.5. Okay, now, is it going to be a profit or loss? Very simple, my dear friends. What was your original contract? Sale. So, this contract will be for a sale rate. The other one, you take it as a purchase rate, opposite. So, very simple. So, sale minus purchase, 67.8 minus 67.5. So, you have a profit of 0.3. Simple enough. And previous fair value was 0. And here fair value is 0.3. So, you have to account for 0.3. Straightforward. Simple enough. You can think long position, short position, which if you are comfortable in SFM. When you enter into a contract of forward sale, it means it is a short position. Entering into a contract to sell means short position. And here you have entered into short position and market rate has come down to 67.5. So when you take a short position, if the price comes down, it is good for you. It's a profit. If you're good at long and short things, you can follow, or otherwise, you can make it very simple. Whatever is original contract, you keep it same. Opposite, you make it as the other one. In this case, purchase, difference, you can identify easily profit or loss. Okay, coming to 31st December, on that day, forward rate. That on 31st December, due on 31st December, it's like on 31st December, On 30th September, it's a spot rate only. That is what they have given, 67. So what is the contract rate? Same. Contract rate is 67. Here I can take spot rate and market rate, both are same because due on same day. So market rate, this is 67.8. Market rate is 67. So this is, say, your original purchase, original sale contract. So opposite purchase. So 67.8 minus 67, that is a profit of 0.8. But remember, this is cumulative profit from the beginning, but out of which 0.3 have already accounted, or this is like a fair value as on date. The fair value of the asset as on date, but 0.3 is already accounted. So additional profit to be accounted is 0.5. So basically 0.3 I accounted earlier, 0.8 now. So effectively I have 0.5 to be accounted in 31st December. Okay, let's see what journal entry they have passed. On 30th of September, just 1 second. Okay. Okay, on 9th of September, no recognition because both are equal. We discussed that. On 30th of September, we understood 0.3 is the profit. So 0.3 is the profit. The entry will be derivative asset or fair value asset to P&L. Asset account recognized because profit, and profit transferred to P&L. 0.3 was the profit, right? So 0.3 into 10 lakh, 3 lakh. So derivative asset account debit to P&L account. And 31st December, we discussed additional profit of 0.5. So on 31st December, same entry, same derivative asset. Okay, previously they did the derivative asset, forward contract assets. Anyway, both are same. Derivative asset, and here also derivative asset of additional 0.5. 0.5 10 lakh means 5 lakh to P&L 5 lakh. On 31st December, you have purchased the machinery. So machinery will be purchased at the forward rate. At what rate? 67.8. So 10 lakh into 67.8, machinery account debit or PP account debit, 67.8 into 10 lakh, 6 crore 78 lakh. To bank, the spot rate 67 and 0.8 is the forward contract asset or derivative asset. What is debited now will be credited, 8 lakhs. So basically, if I have to simply give you this one simple answer, one line answer, when you entered into forward contract on 9 September, machinery value 10 lakh dollars, what is its rupee value? As on that date, it was 67.8. As on that date, it is 67.8. Correct? Yes. Now today, it became 67. So, between 9 September and 31st December, 67.8 has become 67. Does it mean the value of machinery reduced? No, sir. Value of machinery not reduced. The currency fluctuation happened. Then you account the machinery at that rate only from 67.8 to 67. That 0.8 you take it as a foreign exchange gain. Take it to P&L account. I hope you understood the final summary point. If you don't apply separation accounting, if you don't apply embed derivative, then what would you do? You account it today, PP account debit 6.7 crores, 2 creditors or 2 bank 6.7 crores, close. What really happened now? Machinery value you show at a higher value and you are showing the foreign exchange gain. So net to net basis, the profit will not be affected on the long term, but reporting basis, definitely it will be affected. I hope you got the point. The ultimate accounting, what we are doing, what was the value of machinery when you entered into the forward contract, when you sign the forward contract, at that rate only you book machinery value. PP value. Any fluctuations what is taking place, you account separately, don't mix it to the machinery value because we are separating the host contract and derivatives. Hope you're able to make some sense out of this. Typically confusing problem in study material also many questions are there on this. This also one of them. Okay, hope you understood. I'll go further. On 1st of April 2019, 8% convertible loan with a nominal value of 12 lakh was issued at par by Cargo Limited, redeemable on 31st March 2013. So 2021, 22, 23, 4 years. Alternatively, it may be convertible to equity shares on the basis of 100 new shares of each 200 worth of loan. An equivalent loan without conversion option would be carried at interest of 10%. Interest of 96,000 has already been paid and included in the finance cost. Present value rates are given 8%, 10%. How the company will present the above loan notes in the financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2020. Okay. This is one typical type of problem which has been asked. You will find numerous problems on this variety. Compound financial instrument, convertible debentures. So you have a liability which can be converted into shares. It has the debt component, it has an equity component. So from the total proceeds, you take out the debt component, the balancing residual amount becomes equity component. How do you calculate the debt component? The obligation to pay cash becomes debt complement. So in this loan, in this instrument, in this debt or debenture, if the conversion option was not there, what would have been your cash outflow? In this case, you take that as whatever cash outflow you take. But if the conversion option was not there, if it was a pure financial instrument, if it was a pure debt instrument, how much interest rate they would have expected, that you use it for discounting purpose and compute the present value. So simple point, cash flow comes from convertible debentures. The discounting rate comes from non-convertible debenture because contractual cash flows comes from this contract, convertible debenture. But the market rate, what would be the rate without conversion option? Means non-convertible debentures. So in this case, they have given an equivalent loan without conversion option have carried interest rate of 10%. So this is used for discounting purposes. Market rate, you can say discounting rate. Cash flow, you take it at 12 lakh at 8%. So I'll show you what institute has done so that we don't have to write everything. Okay. So how much amount is payable? Contractual cash flow 12 lakh into 8%, 96,000 year 1, 96,000 year 2, 96,000 year 3, 96,000 year 4. And last year you will be repaying the amount of loan also, redeemable at par, nothing is given, redeemable at par 12 lakh. So last year we have 12 lakh 96,000. And discounting factor, I just told you 10%. So we take 0.91, 0.83, 0.75, 0.68. A piece of caution, when they give you discounting rate, you take only this. I know if you do it in calculator, you will have take 3 decimal, 4 decimals, your answer may be more accurate, fine, but don't do that. Whatever they have given, please make use of it. In one of the examination I've seen, this rate being wrong rate also. Heading rate they have given correct. These discount rates are different. If you calculate in calculator, it's giving different numbers. Some people took that number and solved it. I don't know whether those people got marks or not. But whatever they have given, simply use it. So 0.91, 0.83, 0.75, 0.68. So total recognized the present value, that is debt component. Proceeds how much? 12 lakh. So entire 12 lakh is the total proceeds. Balancing figure becomes equity component. You can also present this slightly differently because 96,000 same. So you can write like this: year 1 to 4, 96,000 every year cash flow, and year 4, 12 lakh. There you don't take 12 lakh 96,000. 1 to 4 means there you take it. Discounting factor, you can do annuity factor. You can add all the 4 and you write it here because it's all the 4 years. And last year alone, you do for 12 lakh, you multiply and you do the total, you get the same amount. You can present like this also. A typical method, I hope you know this method. So I've given the solution directly. Hope you understand. Okay. How do you show it in financial statement? Let me just show it to you. Presentation fund statements in the P&L account. Then we'll look at the balance sheet. So in the P&L account, how will you show? Okay. So what is the liability amount we have recognized? 11 lakh 12,320. Correct. Now 11 lakh 20,320. That we are going to apply. We call it as unwinding also. We apply discounting factor of 10% on 11 lakh 2320 10%. That's why we get first year expense 1 lakh 12,032. And 96,000 already charged income statement. So additional finance charge is 16,000 effectively. 1 lakh 12,000 is what we show it in P&L account. What do you show in balance sheet? Sorry. Okay. So what do you show in balance sheet? Equity. We already computed 79,680. That will be remain as equity until the last year. And last year that becomes free reserves in equity only. But this amount becomes free reserves if it, nothing if it exercised in cash, or if it is shares are issued, it becomes a security premium. That is, the settlement will take place on the maturity date last year. And we have remaining amount. How much? The amount we have recognized initially 11 lakh 2320. We have to increase this by amount of finance charge 1 lakh 12,032. So 11 lakh 12, 11 lakh 20 plus 1 lakh 12, and whatever the payment made, cash flow took place 96,000 you subtract, and that becomes the remaining balance to be shown in the balance sheet, which typically we say amortized cost basis. A typical amount. We can also prepare amortization cost schedule. Ask in other problems, not here. So this much is sufficient from exam point of view. Okay, hope you got it. Next, Jewels Limited entered into transaction to purchase 1000 grams of platinum on 15th Jan 2020. Transaction provides for price payable which is equal to market value of 1000 grams of platinum on 15 Jan and shall be settled by issue of such number of equity shares is required for aforementioned date at a price of 100 per share on 15th April. Whether this is to be classified as liability or equity on 31st of March as per Ind AS 109, you are required to explain with reasons. Okay, so two things you need to apply. Check whether it's a derivative contract and check whether it is settled on fixed number of shares or variable number of shares. So it's a contract entered into purchase. You're not purchasing now, you're going to settle at a future date. Today you're not paying anything. So settlement at a future date, no initial investment, and the value of this transaction depends on the way platinum value changes. So it is derivative contract changing with respect to a uh, with respect to underlying variable. Underlying variable is the value of the platinum, and contract value will change based on that. So all the three conditions satisfied. Value changes with respect to value of platinum. No initial investment. It will be set at future date. So it is a derivative contract. Now the question regarding liability or equity depends on, are you issuing fixed number of shares for fixed consideration? Fixed for fixed. What is the consideration? At a price of 100 per share. So consideration is fixed, but what is the number of shares? Issue of such number of equity shares to settle the aforementioned transaction. Value of 1000 grams of platinum. So if the platinum value increases, you will have to issue more number of shares. If platinum value is less, you have to issue less number of shares, which means number of shares are not fixed, number of shares are variable. In this case, contract results in issue of variable number of shares based on transaction price to be determined in future. So variable number means fixed for fixed criteria, not satisfied. Therefore, it becomes a financial liability. Okay, so that will take care of this problem on January 2021 examination question. Okay, so hope you understood based on these problems. Nice. Okay, so let's stop at this point in time. These are the problems regarding Ind AS 32, then regarding Ind AS 109, including hedge accounting, cash flow hedge. People have very issues, modification and all. That problem is also there. We will take it up in the next session. So let's stop at this point. We'll see you tomorrow at same time, 7 o'clock. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.